from Nvidia's explosive growth to essentially every earnings report we've seen and expectations for Apple Worldwide Developers Conference. AI is all encompassing in our economy today.
That's right. So joining us now with the latest in all things AI is a reporter at The Verge, Kylie Robison. Kylie, thank you so much for joining. And we can start with Nvidia here, very much in focus because of its massive market cap and this recent DOJ antitrust investigation. How important is this when it comes to the world of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Nvidia has obviously a very wide control over how artificial intelligence is being created. The largest companies like Microsoft, OpenAI are using Nvidia's chips to train their large language models, the next generation of large language models. So how this impacts AI as a whole is, Nvidia gets to choose who gets these chips. We saw that xAI and Tesla, Elon Musk's companies, got a large order of chips from Nvidia. This can be a problem for smaller startups who are trying to make these same models who can't get that allocated resources.
And at the top of it all is Jensen Huang, who's become arguably the Steve Jobs of our time. The leather jacket, the whole persona is fascinating. Monday at Taiwan, he was signing a woman's chest, an autograph on a woman's chest. There is video of it on the Verge website. He has become a rock star CEO. Is he the key to their advantage? And how do you describe that advantage?
That's an interesting take. I was watching earlier and I heard you say Jensen.
Jensanity.
Jensanity, yes. Yes. I think, it's normal for these giant tech companies to have a big personality as a CEO. Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. It's not surprising. This company has, become almost a household name overnight, it feels like. I'm not sure how that helps their advantage. I'm not sure signing women's chests at conferences is going to be a huge advantage for a hardware business. But I don't think they need that either way. They're already at the top of the market, so much so that there's scrutiny from the DOJ. So, I think they're on a great track to continue their growth.
Well, certainly investors having a lot of faith in that company, Kylie. I do want to turn to Secretary Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who does plan to warn of significant risks of using AI in finance. It's according to experts released yesterday ahead of a speech that she is set to give. Why is it important that the Treasury Secretary is weighing in on this?
Well, I think that AI models at their current stage are not advanced enough or trustworthy enough to be, heavily used as infrastructure. And I think it's good that they're looking into regulation and looking into ways to keep consumers safe, because just on a less important level, we saw with Google AI overviews, when you searched, it was giving incorrect answers. So for it to be baked into financial institutions, I think is something worth scrutinizing and looking at.
Yeah, in that same vein, some current and former employees of OpenAI released this open letter this week about some dire warnings about lack of guardrails and safety precautions. Can companies set some guardrails on this? Can our U.S. government officials? Or how concerned should we all be?
I think at its current state, we don't have a lot to be concerned about. I don't want people to listen to this and think that the world is ending, because that's not the case. But what these researchers are concerned about is the lack of transparency within these companies. And, if this technology is going to grow to create artificial general intelligence, something that's as intelligent as a human, it's important to be transparent about how they're building that, how they're keeping consumers safe. So that's what that letter was about. And I think it's an important step. But however, I have heard criticism that these researchers haven't done enough to explain exactly what safety precautions OpenAI is taking or not taking. So I think that's important to dig into and figure out.
Yeah, Kylie, to your point there, that's been the concern with OpenAI because it is a private company and not a public one. We don't know how a lot of this technology is exactly being developed, but we had seen Sam Altman, one of the key founders of OpenAI, and recently, of course, the head of OpenAI, before some trepidation there, testified before Congress in mid-May, calling on lawmakers to regulate the industry. by licensing and testing requirements for the development and release of these models. If you are a user, how should you think about your data being used to program and train some of these models?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I think it's almost dystopian to think about. As a journalist, there's a lot of content licensing deals being done with publications. So the things I write end up training OpenAI. When it comes to your private information, I think it's just good to be conscious of what you're inputting into these programs. For instance, one of the things I do, which is probably a little bit too much, is that I try to not give companies that are training large language models access to my camera roll. That would include Meta and Twitter. You just don't know. You would have to dive really deep into their terms of use to figure out what they're using to train their large language models. So I think just be conscious of this new world where we are pretty much the content, the data for these large language models, and yeah, just try to keep that at the top of the mind.
So you think that people, Kylie, should assume that if their data is shared with a company like Meta, for instance, that will be used to train a large language model?
I think that's a precaution I take, having been so close on this beat. It's not something I've seen for certain happening, but I think it could happen. For instance, PhotoBucket signed a deal where everything used on everything published on PhotoBucket is going to be used to train large language models. And I thought, when I was 15 years old, I didn't expect the stuff I was uploading on PhotoBucket to be used to train large language models. So now I'm really cognizant of everything that I have. Could it someday change? Could these terms of use change for the things I upload to be used to train large language models?
You mentioned being 15. A recent survey from Common Sense Media and Harvard found more than 40% of young people, that's 14 to 22, have never used AI tools, and just 4% said they use it every day. What do you make of those findings? Do you get a sense of who is using AI today and for what in terms of practical applications?
Yeah, so The Verge did a study that showed that one of the most used applications of AI is for email. So it's not entirely surprising to me that young people aren't using artificial intelligence as we might think. And that's something I think a lot in my San Francisco tech bubble is how impactful is this technology outside of this world. I have seen statistics that use has declined. I think it makes sense as these technologies have become stagnant in how useful they are or how factual they are, that people aren't relying on them as much. I think what we're going to see is how it impacts search, because we've seen that with Google integrating AI overviews. We have Perplexity, which is an AI search engine, and OpenAI is reportedly also working on an AI-generated search engine. So I think that's going to have the most immediate impact in the near future for how people are using AI. But for young people, I am surprised, because something I think about a lot is how it impacts education and how students are using AI or how they're not, and how teachers are able to adapt to that in the classroom. So it makes sense, but it is also surprising.
What are the general blanket AI skills that you think every American should be equipped with today?
That's a great question. I think, something I want Americans who use this to keep in mind is that it isn't fully baked yet. There is a lot of inaccuracies. There's obviously disclaimers on these AIs that, it's still being tested, not to fully trust it. But I think that's the most important skill, is to be going into it eyes wide open and realizing it's not going to give you all of the answers. Just in terms of skills, I think, it can automate a lot of mundane tasks that maybe you don't want to do. And as it gets more advanced for things like email, accounting, these are things that you can use to automate and then free up your time, which could be a useful skill to have.
All right, a time saver. We always like to hear that. Kylie Robison, AI reporter at The Verge, thank you.
Use it as a co-pilot. Don't put it in the driver's seat. Let it ride shotgun with you.